Welcome to part, I think we're on 5 now. So we're moving on to parenting, which is one of my very favorite things to talk about. So you have a book you will be reading in this class called Positive Discipline, and I have told you in an intro lecture how important I think it is to educate yourselves on parenting, because it is very sad that parents don't have to have any training to do the most important job, I think, that there is. So you are going to be educated, and I am happy I get to do some of that. And of course, everyone has their own opinions, and I understand that some of you will say, well, you know, these things worked for me. I turned out fine, so it's all good, but how did it make you feel? And is there a way that's maybe better or less likely to cause damage to a child? Because one child could be dealt with very harshly, and it could work for them and it motivates them to be better, and another child could be dealt with very harshly and it destroys them. Not destroy, well, it could destroy them, but it could also make them give up. And once they give up, then anything goes, and they could end up being not happy and have problems with addiction, crime, you name it. So we're doing a really important job when we become parents. And I'm interested to know how many of you are parents. So that's something that you'll be able to tell me. Or you may have already in the intro post. So okay, let's talk about this. So one of the first things I wanted to say is the old Love Talk that I had previous to this semester was with a good friend of mine who's a great motivational speaker, and his name's Nick Arandes. And he talked about a technique called I don't know. And what he says is that we assume that we know how we're feeling, but we really don't know. And this is very true, because there's so many things that go into how we feel. And again, test this out for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. So you know that maybe one day someone does something, your partner, and it doesn't bother you. You're like, yeah, whatever. But another day, it just really upsets you, really sets you on edge. What's the difference? You don't know. Like, we don't know why things upset us all the time. We think we know. We're like, well, I'm upset because you left milk up all over the counter and you didn't pick it up. You didn't clean up after yourself. But then maybe yesterday they did the same thing and it didn't bother you. So the first thing to understand with relationships, and then I'm gonna, of course, be talking about this in terms of parenting, is to recognize that you don't always know why you feel the way you feel or why you do the things you do. And so recognizing that you don't know gives you the opportunity to find out within yourself what's going on. So instead of blaming the other person, you go, wow, why am I so upset about this? And you can have more understanding for yourself. And if it's something that's really upsetting and you want the other person to really try hard not to do it, then you can communicate that. Hey, it's so important for me that you make your bed. So can you please do that? And I know, it's not a big deal to you, you're a kid, but really important to me. What you don't want to do is, you need to make your bed because that's the right thing to do. Everyone needs to make their bed. Well, do they? Are they going to be a better person because they made their bed? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, probably not. So just because something's important to you doesn't mean that it is important to your child. And I don't understand how so many parents forget how they felt when they were kids. So I want you to remember. I want you to remember how you felt when you were a teenager, or maybe you still live at home. How do you feel with the parenting that you have? And we're going to do a whole parenting section where you'll get to talk more about that. But if you remember how you felt when I was in high school, I remember thinking, if I am ever a parent, or when I'm a parent, because I wanted to be one, I'm not going to do this to my kids. I will not do this to my kids. And I didn't. I remembered that. And I didn't treat my kids the same way. That doesn't mean that I didn't make mistakes. I've made plenty of mistakes, I'm sure, and I'll hear about it when they grow up, which is fine. I want to hear about it, and then I can talk to them about it and apologize for whatever I've done that's been hurtful to them. But I do know that I didn't make the same mistakes that my parents made. I made new ones, most likely, but did it differently, and my kids seem to be doing great. I have a 16 and now 18-year-old, and they are amazing kids, and I can't take credit for that, but I also know that they have always felt loved and that they have learned how to be responsible. They're both super responsible and kind and respectful. Not always to me, but that's okay. Are you always respectful to other people? Probably not. So I know that they learned some really great values, and I didn't do it through, they've never been spanked or hit. I've done it through kindness. I mean, I've lost my temper. I've yelled and then I apologize, because yelling is not necessary. The better thing to do than yelling is to whisper, because if you whisper, people have to listen closer. So why do we yell? Because we're upset and we want to take it out on the other person. Not necessary. So, and I don't need to yell. They're teenagers. I don't yell at them. But with little kids, sometimes it's really challenging, and you may find that you raise your voice, and it's not a great form of parenting. There is something called good enough parenting, where if you're not abusing your kids, you're not neglecting your kids, they feel loved, they're probably going to be okay. There's also not good enough parenting, and that's when there's abuse, neglect, and maybe it's a societal issue that the parent doesn't have control over. Maybe they don't have money for food, or they don't have money for childcare, and the children suffer. It's not because the parents aren't doing a good job, but typically when there is enough food and shelter, and the parents can do a good job because they have the means to do so, then there is something called good enough parenting. But I certainly don't blame those that have to leave their kids alone because they have no place for them to go, or are just struggling to feed their kids. It's really rough. All right, I'm going to give you a couple examples from my parenting, not because, again, that it's so great, but just to give you a couple examples because it makes it more interesting, I think. When my son was about 7, he had a DS. You know, they have those game players called the DS, and he was playing it, and I told him to stop, and he wasn't really listening, and for some reason on this particular day, it really bothered me that he wasn't listening to me. So I got really mad, and he was in the bathroom, he was like taking a bath, and he's like all happy, and I grabbed it out of his hand. And his eyes got really big, because I did it like forcefully, you know. I'm like, I told you to stop, and I took it from him. And his eyes got really big, and then he said, you know, he got really sad, and he said, "You're usually so nice." And it broke my heart. I still remember it, obviously. And I thought, wow, you know, that was really harsh. And that was one of those things like that I never wanted to do to my kids, and I made a mistake. I lost my temper, and again, I don't know, this is where I don't know comes in. I don't know why I was so upset on that one particular day. Why did he have to listen to me that quickly? So I apologized. I told him I was really sorry, and I am really careful about how I say things, because you can be firm without being mean, and you want to decide what you're going to do as a parent, not make your kid do something, or not take some kind of forceful action like that, unless it's a safety issue. But even in a safety issue, you don't have to be mean, you just have to be firm. So that's one example. Another one would be with my daughter when she was a teenager. I had a boyfriend after I got divorced when the kids were 6 and 8, and that ended up being actually a really good thing, because my ex-husband and I, even though I didn't want to get divorced, we had very different parenting styles, and so that created difficulty for me, because I wanted to be, and this I'm sure is true with some of your parents, I wanted to be really nurturing and guide that way, and he was more punitive and controlling.